Hi everyone, my name is Amy Aguilar. My topic today is on income inequality. Now I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Occupy Wall Street movement. This movement stemmed from the frustrations of rising inequality in America. According to the American Federation of Labor, Congress, Industrial Organizations, today's CEO earns 350 times more than their average worker. Now maybe this figure doesn't seem significant to you, but when you compare that to the ratio from the period of the late 1940s to the late 1970s, which was our strongest and most prosperous economic period, that ratio was approximately 50 to 1. My claim of fact that I'll be proving today is that income inequality has a negative effect on the economy. According to businessdictionary.com, income inequality is defined as a measurement of the distribution of income that highlights the gap between individuals or households making most of the income in a given country and those making very little. I have two supporting claims that will help to prove my argument, the first being that a strong middle class directly correlates to a strong economy. My second supporting claim will be current policies benefit the wealthy but do not help to grow the economy in the long term. So for my first supporting claim, consumer spending attributes to 70% of the economy. Wages for the middle and lower classes have stagnated while the cost of living have increased, which results in less disposable income. Less disposable income means that less money is being circulated back into the economy, and as a result, fewer jobs are being created because there is a lack of demand. Nobel Prize-winning economist and Columbia professor Joseph Stiglitz writes, "Our middle class is too weak to support the consumer spending that has historically driven our economic growth." My second point, there is a limit to how much a wealthy person can consume. Instead of spending it, the very wealthy save and invest the majority of their income. Middle-class households earning less than $100,000 per year will spend almost all, if not all, of their income, while the very wealthy will spend only a fraction of theirs. Former Secretary of Labor and current Professor of Public Policy at University of California, Berkeley, Robert Reich writes, "When income is concentrated in relatively few hands, the overall demand for goods and services shrinks because the rich do not nearly spend everything they earn." Which brings me to my second supporting claim, that current policies benefit the wealthy but do not help to grow the economy in the long term. The very wealthy pay a lower percentage in taxes compared to the middle class. They shift their income to capital gains, which is income from investments, which are taxed at 20% or less, while the rest of Americans with regular income comprised of salaries and wages are taxed up to twice that percentage. Joseph Stiglitz writes, "Mitt Romney, the Republican presidential nominee last year, became the symbol for the wealthy who don't pay their fair share when he admitted that he paid only 14% of his income in taxes in 2011, even as he notoriously complained that 47% of Americans were freeloaders." In addition to shifting their income, the wealthy also make their best efforts to hide their income. Joseph Stiglitz writes, "The tax laws don't require the reporting of all kinds of income. For the rich, hiding such assets has become an elite sport. Many avail themselves of the Cayman Islands or other offshore tax shelters to avoid taxes. They don't have to report income until it is brought back to the United States. So too, capital gains have to be reported as income only when they are realized." My second point, when tax revenues decrease, the government cuts programs. Tax revenues have decreased because the wages of the middle and lower classes have stagnated, which results in less taxable income. Meanwhile, the top marginal tax rate has decreased significantly, which means the very wealthy are not paying as large a share in taxes as they used to. In addition, as I said before, many keep their money in offshore accounts in order to avoid paying taxes altogether. Joseph Stiglitz writes, "The top marginal income tax rate peaked at 94% during World War II and remained at 70% through the 1960s and 1970s. It is now at 39.6%. Tax fairness has gotten much worse in the 30 years since the Reagan Revolution of the 1980s. Beginning in the late 1970s, Robert Reich says that the government halved the top income tax rate from the range of 70 to 90% to 25 to 39%, allowed many of the nation's rich to treat their income as capital gains that are subject to no more than 15% tax rate. So because of this, funding for education and infrastructure and research is cut. So workers are less educated or are paying more for their education, which again results in less disposable income." Joseph Stiglitz says, "Low tax receipts mean that the government cannot make the vital investments in infrastructure, education, research, and health that are crucial for restoring long-term economic strength." And my final point, with great wealth comes the ability to influence politics. Corporations and individuals can essentially buy politicians and make sure they support policies that will increase their profits. I'm sure you're all familiar with the case of Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission. This is where the Supreme Court ruled the government cannot restrict political funding by corporations and associations. Robert Reich says, with hefty campaign contributions and platoons of lobbyists and public relations flacks, the rich helped push through legal changes that enabled them to accumulate even more income and wealth, including tacit permission to bust unions, slash corporate payrolls, and reduce benefits, lower taxes for themselves, and deregulate Wall Street. They generously finance think tanks, books, media, and ads designed to persuade Americans that free markets always know best. As you can see, income inequality not only harms the economy, it also undermines our democracy. And in conclusion, stagnating wages, lack of government investment due to reduced tax receipts, and that the wealthy do not spend enough to make up the difference are all factors that create income inequality, which in turn contributes to a diminishing economy. Thank you.
All right, the opening is clear as to what the proposition is. You do a good job citing the secondary claims. It sounds like you're only going to have 2 secondary claims, but in the body of the speech, there are 3 secondary claims that get developed, and so that was a little bit awkward. I'm not quite sure whether it was just a phrasing or whether something just slipped by. It was, so I knew that there was a third point when you presented it, but it just seemed odd that it wasn't as clear at the beginning. The signposting internally is very clear and easy to follow, so that part's okay. There were a couple of places where it seemed like there were multiple claims being presented under the secondary claims. That could probably be tightened up a little bit. It's just some language issues, and sometimes that gets buried because of the frequency with which you're going to testimony evidence to support those conclusions. There's a fairness presumption on the third point also. I guess it's not the third point, it's the point on tax revenues and what is, the appropriate amount of revenues. There's, I think it's a Reich statement when you're talking about what the rates were after the war and in the 70s, and then there's a question about fairness, which obviously implies that there's a value claim that's going on here. I think there's an underlying value assumption here that says that government needs a particular amount of money and that the inability to obtain that money is problematic. So you need to have an explanation of what the appropriate amount of money might be, what level of taxation is right based on what rate. You clearly think that 39% is inadequate or that 20% is inadequate. So is there a standard that would get us the income equity that we need in order to sustain the economy in the way that you're describing? So, for instance, if a tax rate at 75% would allow us to have sufficient revenues to do everything that you're talking about, and it would generate the consumer interest and all those kinds of things, then we need some data like that. It's a little ambiguous. Mostly there's a lot of attack argument that's based here, and a lot of the, and you are citing 2 scholars, and I think that you do a good job giving them credentials, but it is the same 2 scholars repeatedly, and so I think you could use a little bit more diversity in the information. Let me see, there was something else. Oh, the whole third point on the issue of the way people are spending the money, and you have Citizens United, you're talking about that. That just feels like it's completely unrelated to the economic argument that you're presenting. It turns it into a political argument about a different issue, and I'm not saying that there isn't an argument there, but I don't think it's really connected to the issue as you presented at the beginning. That's got a negative effect on the economy. It might have a negative effect on the political system. Like I said, that's a different claim. And if you're talking about the economy, then let's stick to the economic issues. All right.